A stunning $50 million rape lawsuit against former NFL star and sports commentator Shannon Sharpe has come to a conclusion, just days after some civil court drama out in Las Vegas. We're taking a look at the latest developments with celebrity criminal defense attorney Bradford Cohen. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Gillespie, and today for Jesse Weber. A bombshell announcement in the huge lawsuit filed by a Jane Doe against sports commentator and podcaster Shannon Sharpe. The litigation has come to an end thanks to an out-of-court settlement. Tony Busby, the high-profile and sometimes controversial attorney who filed the suit on behalf of Jane Doe, posted an update to Instagram on Friday, saying, quote, "On April 20th, 2025, the Busby law firm filed a complaint in Nevada making several allegations against Shannon Sharpe on behalf of our client. Both sides acknowledge a long-term, consensual, and tumultuous relationship. After protracted and respectful negotiations, I'm pleased to announce that we have reached a mutually agreed upon resolution. All matters have now been addressed satisfactorily, and the matter is closed. The lawsuit will thus be dismissed with prejudice." So here's some of the background regarding the accusations that Shannon Sharpe has been facing. According to this complaint, Jane Doe worked out at the same gym as Sharpe did in Los Angeles. She was 19 at the time, and she claims he had been watching her during workouts and finally introduced himself, insisting that she give him her number. The filing says Jane Doe found Sharpe physically intimidating. This is a direct quote. Over the next couple of weeks, Sharpe incessantly pursued plaintiff. He constantly approached her at the gym and attempted to contact her frequently with phone calls and text messages asking to meet up, unwilling to take no for an answer. Eventually, plaintiff gave in and agreed to meet with Sharpe outside of the gym. However, before doing so, Sharpe demanded that Doe sign a non-disclosure agreement, or NDA, something plaintiff found a bit concerning. She wondered why Sharpe was so insistent on her signing an NDA. She refused. Despite his repeated efforts to get her to sign, she refused time and again. Eventually, he dropped the issue and invited her to his house. Now, the lawsuit claims the relationship between Sharpe and Jane Doe, more than 30 years his junior, was consensual but rocky. She says Shannon Sharpe insisted they were exclusive, but then she says she caught him multiple times lying about his whereabouts and who he was seeing. According to the filing, by October 2024, Sharpe's behavior had grown progressively worse, beyond anything plaintiff had experienced with him before. At this point, he was insistent upon recording their sexual activities, sometimes without her knowledge. Sharpe was also sharing the videos with others without her permission or knowledge. Sharpe would repeatedly tell Doe that he wanted to do to her things that would make no other man want her. By this point, Sharpe was no longer able to credibly maintain that the relationship was exclusive. He had at this point accidentally or purposely to advance his career went live on Instagram while having sex with another woman. Sharpe flew into fits of anger when plaintiff noted his infidelity to their relationship or called him out about his extraneous activities. What had once been manipulation, control, and intimidation now became something far more dangerous and sinister. Sharpe even figured out how to get into Doe's apartment complex without her permission. Sharpe made it clear that what Doe wanted was of no moment, that Sharpe would get what he wanted when he wanted it. In October 2024, Shannon Sharpe violently sexually assaulted and anally raped plaintiff 2 different times in Las Vegas, Nevada, blatantly ignoring her requests for him to stop. He did it again in January. Jane Doe had filed under 2 causes of action. Firstly, assault, sexual assault, battery, and sexual battery. And secondly, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Sharpe adamantly denied all allegations through his attorney, Lanny Davis, who called the lawsuit a classic definition of blackmail. But Sharpe did step away from his duties at ESPN while the litigation was ongoing. This is a Law&Crime legal alert. Did you know that children are being diagnosed with serious conditions like type 2 diabetes and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? And research is potentially linking ultra-processed foods to these outcomes? Well, Morgan & Morgan is stepping in to hold food companies accountable. With decades of experience fighting large corporations, they're ready to stand up for families who deserve justice. If your child under 21 has been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or fatty liver disease, visit www.forthepeople.com/food or scan the QR code on your screen to learn more. Now, Sharpe wrote in a statement on X, formerly Twitter. He said, quote, "I will be devoting this time to my family and responding and dealing with these false and disruptive allegations against me. I plan to return to ESPN at the start of the NFL preseason." The former NFL star also took to Instagram shortly after the lawsuit became public, posting a now deleted video where he said he was considering a lawsuit of his own.
"This is a shakedown. That video should actually be 10 minutes or so. Hey, Tony, instead of releasing your edit, put the whole video out. I don't have it, or I would myself. You know what happened, and you're trying to manipulate the media. The encounter in question took place during the day at her invitation, and now that appears to be a deliberate setup. What they're getting is sued for defamation and trying to take me down. My career is all about real talk and honesty. I know my family and fans know exactly what this is about, and I'm going to be out there telling you whatever I need to say, just like I always do. I love all you guys."
Now, on July 9th, all the parties had been scheduled to have a hearing in a Las Vegas courtroom to go over where the case stood. But Tony Busby was a no-show. According to the Nevada media outlet KLAS, the judge expressed disappointment that no legal representation even showed up on behalf of Jane Doe. Now, that's what was initially reported in court. But following this supposed no-show, Busby came out and said that the defense actually agreed to postpone that hearing, meaning it was not supposed to happen. So that's the reason why he didn't appear. And the Daily Mail reports that Sharpe's legal team shared a statement with them about the miscommunication. And it reads, quote, "We are apologizing to the court by letter for wasting the court's time. There was a mutual agreement among counsel to postpone the motion scheduled for July 9th. As a result, there was no expectation by our team that her legal team would appear in person." Now, in court, Sharpe's team requested an extension of 45 days, meaning that the next hearing would have been in September. But then, on July 18th, it was announced that there'd been an out-of-court settlement for an undisclosed amount. But this isn't the only legal trouble Sharpe has been dealing with. There is an ongoing lawsuit against him right now in New York, and it was filed back in 2023 by a woman named Michelle Evans. She's representing herself in this litigation and is seeking at least $14 million in damages for alleged defamation, libel, slander, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and negligent infliction of emotional distress. Quote, "Michelle Evans was subjected to non-consensual sexual encounters, which in itself is a deeply traumatic experience that has resulted in long-term psychological harm, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, severe anxiety, and depression. The trauma is exacerbated by public defamatory statements made by Shannon Sharpe, which have led to public humiliation, loss of dignity, and a sense of betrayal." She even provided a chart showing how Sharpe's alleged actions impacted her. But according to a sworn affidavit from Sharpe, he denies the allegations that Michelle Evans laid out against him, saying it was actually Evans herself who was manipulative and threatening, and says she was harassing him via text messages and phone calls. But in the latest filing with the court, Evans says Sharpe has continued to speak ill of her. In the filing, she writes, quote, "Plaintiff had expressed concern that defendant was likely to engage in further defamatory conduct. Unfortunately, that concern has now materialized. On or about April 25th, 2025, Mr. Sharpe issued a public statement, widely disseminated online and through major media outlets, that directly names plaintiff and includes several false and defamatory claims made with actual malice. These include that plaintiff was obsessed with him, that plaintiff manufactured her claims, that plaintiff attempted to kill her husband to pursue a relationship with him." Evans continues, "These statements are patently false and were crafted with reckless disregard for the truth. Their publication has already led to widespread online harassment, including people publicly accusing plaintiff of murder, an escalation that has placed her in danger and deepened her emotional distress. This new publication constitutes a separate, actionable event." All right, to talk about all of this, I want to bring on today's guest. It's celebrity criminal defense attorney Bradford Cohen, who, Bradford, I know you're a friend of Sidebar, a friend of us, and I know you've been following this case pretty closely throughout all of it. So I got to ask you right away, what is your reaction to this settlement? Do you think it was the right call?
You know, and I tell everyone this on all these cases, there's two roads to take, and you must not go in the middle of those two roads. It's either you go all out war, right, and just take depositions and crush someone, or you settle before it's even filed. Those are the two roads here. So I'm never happy with someone that settles, unless they're settling for a really good deal, that they settle before discovery, before they take her deposition, things of that nature, because it's like you have to pick one of those paths. And that was the problem I had with Sean Combs's case, right? Like either settle before the complaint gets filed or don't settle at all until you take all discovery and you have everything out and you're showing everyone why you're not guilty of whatever they are associating with you. In Sean Combs's case, the complaint comes out and they settle the same day. That signaled weakness, and that signaled the Southern District of New York to come on in on that kind of case. This case, from what I know about it, from the texts that I've seen, from different kind of pieces of evidence that I've seen on the case, this kind of screams that the individual who was suing Shannon was a willing participant, and all these things happened, and that's what the evidence shows to me. Now, Tony Buzbee is not known for being, how can I put this lightly? He's
how are
not
you going to put it?
I'm wondering, how am I going to put this? He's not known for being the utmost above board guy. I don't know how else to say it, but he's been caught in some issues in the past by the court, by defendants. Jay-Z's case got dismissed. These kind of things that are going on with the cases he handles are not always the best for your reputation. That being said, my guess is that this was settled for a very low amount in Shannon Sharpe's eyes, and it would have cost him more. It was just an economic issue to him. So it probably would have cost him more to litigate this case than it was settled for. So my guess is it was settled for under $1 million.
Okay, multiple things I want to touch on throughout that. First of all, Tony Buzbee, we have to touch on him. But before I move on, I want to go back to what you were talking about with P. Diddy. Of course, we're referring to the Cassie lawsuit that was filed. Then a day later, as you said, there's suddenly the settlement. And then, of course, we know what happens after all of that. So with the Shannon Sharpe case, I'm wondering why there wouldn't have been the settlement prior to filing. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but his side, his team, his attorneys should have known that this was coming before it was filed.
Yeah, they always do. So Buzbee, generally his playbook is he'll send a letter out saying all these wild accusations and all these things that he's going to put in a complaint. Sometimes he actually sends the complaint that he's going to file and says, you have 5 days to come up with, $50 million or whatever his demand is. And generally at that point, everyone's like, oh, screw that. I'm not paying $50 million. And Shannon Sharpe was correct for not settling for anywhere near there. Like I said, this is to me a nuisance value case. The value is in how much economically are you going to lose and how much economically are you going to pay a lawyer to defend the case and make sure your reputation is whole. So looking at that, the case was worth somewhere between $1 million to $2 million, maybe $3 million, in talking about the hit to his reputation, and also how much he would pay a real law firm to handle that. A real law firm in these type of cases, and I say a real law firm, I don't want to insult anyone, but a real law firm is normally charging anywhere from, $1,700-$1,800 an hour up to $2,200 an hour. And there's hundreds and hundreds of hours into cases like this. So you can expect this case, if it was to go full boat to a trial, it's a $5 million case. So you start adding those numbers up and seeing economically where you would be to settle the matter. But when someone comes out and says, I want $50 million, it's such an outrageous amount that it takes that off the table. If Buzbee would have come with a more reasonable amount, and maybe he did, I don't know. All we know is the reports for $50 million. But if Buzbee came to the table and said, hey, listen, we're looking for $5 million, that probably would have been a different conversation, because a good lawyer would tell Shannon, hey, we understand this is a total BS case, and sometimes your ego gets in the way and different things happen. But this is strictly an economic, it's just a formula. And you have to think, am I going to lose a contract for $25 million if this comes out? Am I going to pay my lawyers $2 or $3 million? So what's that all worth to me? Okay, she's asking for $5 million, I'll offer $2 or $3 million and get this thing taken care of. And it really is. It's like a legalized extortion is what these cases come down to a lot of times. And it also discounts real victims. And when I say real victims, I don't want to lessen anyone's accusations or how they feel. I know I get a lot of emails and texts like, oh, you're victim shaming and all these different things. It really does discount individuals who have been the subject of violent relationships, of violent sexual batteries, all those things that I don't even take those cases. So all those little things that they're making accusations, and Busby is kind of responsible for that kind of wave. If we look at the cases he's had, he's kind of responsible for that wave of accusations where young ladies that are 22, 23, 24 that are dating a 45 or 50-year-old suddenly 2, 3, 4 months after the relationship is over and they're texting all kinds of crazy stuff and pictures and saying crazy things. They come to the table and they say, now I want to sue you because I felt like you were grooming me or whatever it is. And I think that discounts a lot of victims out there and a lot of victim stories.
Okay, it's interesting to me because I'm drawing parallels between, for example, prior bad acts. If somebody's been accused of one thing and then we go to court, it isn't necessarily relevant here. And I know that I'm just comparing it to what you're talking about with Tony Busby, the pattern that we have seen from him where he's filing similar lawsuits against different people for multiple different plaintiffs, whatever it may be, for similar allegations. And he just keeps coming up over and over, whether we're talking Diddy, now we're talking Shannon Sharpe. So I guess I'm just wondering, what are your opinions on him?
So I don't like to make fun or judge other lawyers. He's not for me. I don't know. I don't know. I grew up in an age where if you were a lawyer and you looked at other lawyers, you had Ben Brafman to look up to, Jerry Spence, who I don't even know if he's ever lost a case. Individuals that I had the opportunity, all of the lawyers in the O.J. Simpson case, just lawyers that you had the opportunity to watch in action. Some I was able to see actually in court. Some I was able to meet and mentor me. So it's I guess it's just different, right? And lawyers always behave differently. You have lawyers that are really, really great, and you have lawyers that are not so great, and then you have lawyers in the middle. And I think that my dad always used to say, your reputation is like a brick wall, right? And you're building your reputation from as small as you can remember, 10 years old up. If you're lying about what happened in school or whatever it is, that all those people remember that, right? As you go forward in life. And brick by brick, you're laying your reputation. And it takes one bad thing to happen that will destroy a lifetime of reputation. Now, in Busby's case, I have a hard time dealing with his reputation and the motions that I've seen filed and the complaints that I've seen filed. I have a difficult time thinking that's okay. And in his mind, I think he thinks it's okay. And I'm sure he drives a nice car, lives in a nice house, takes nice vacations and all these things. But at the end of the day, you can't buy your reputation. So you cannot, doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter, you can give to charity, you can do all these things, but at the end of the day, other lawyers are going to look at you and he might not care what other lawyers think. I happen to care about my reputation because I think that, like I said, it's one of those things that you can't buy. It's one of those things that people look at you in a way and deal with you in a way, and you do business with people in a way. And I think that what I've seen from Tony Busby is not someone that I would want to get in business with.
And reputation is something I want to talk about, especially in this case. I'm going to switch now, though, to talk about Shannon Sharpe in all of this, because he's this major beloved guy, many fans. He involved in ESPN. People know his name. And now we have allegations like this that could tarnish your reputation. So what are your thoughts with Shannon Sharpe? How's his reputation holding up? I mean, is he going back to ESPN? What's ahead?
I'm a big fan of Shannon Sharpe just because I like the way that he behaves on camera. I think he's a funny guy. I had an opportunity to meet him once. Those type of things, sometimes I try to take my bias out when I've met individuals, when I like individuals, when I know individuals. I try to take my bias out and look at cases for what they are. And if there's a serious accusation and those things hurt that individual's reputation, I go deep. I take a look, I read the motions, I read the things that are filed. To me, I think Shannon Sharpe's going to be fine. I think that most people understand what this case was about and how this case came about. And those texts that were sent out by either Shannon or his legal team, describing certain things and certain ways that this individual was speaking, and the the different things that that individual was employed with, and just all those things that you put together. I don't know if he's going to go back to ESPN. Eventually, maybe. But I think his reputation itself is not going to be really that damaged from this case if someone takes the time to actually look at the facts. Now, if he gets another accusation within a year, that's a different issue. But I think everyone kind of knew from reading this complaint, and if you read the articles, what kind of case this was. And it was, to me, it was a legal extortion case. That's what it came down to.
And I do want to make sure that our viewers understand this too, because he's settled. So there's a settlement, but it doesn't mean liability, right? It isn't him saying, yes, I was wrong. Yes, all of these happened, XYZ. I mean, he just settled, and that's that.
Yeah. And I try to explain this to everybody that speaks to me and says to me, well, this person settled. They must be guilty of something. Again, it is a lot of times, it's an economic decision where you want to get out of court. It's an amount that you feel you would be paying anyways to your lawyers. And there's a couple different versions of people. There's some people like Jay-Z that will spend $100 million to make sure that individual understands you're never going to sue me again. And so Jay-Z has just destroyed Tony Busby. I mean, it was a bloodbath. And he destroyed Tony Busby. And Tony Busby, who was like, I don't think Tony Busby will ever be the same after that Jay-Z incident.
I wouldn't be.
Right. And I don't believe Tony Busby will ever sue Jay-Z again. So that's the cost of doing business. So Jay-Z's like, yeah, I got to pay $50 million, $100 million. I'm not going to pay this person a dime. He was like, there was a movie with Mel Gibson where they took his kid and they ransomed his kid for like $5 million, and goes on the news and he says, here's the $5 million that I was going to pay you for ransom. But instead of paying you for ransom, I'm offering $5 million for anyone that brings you to me. And then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, so like those type of people are out there that just don't care. And then there's other people that want to move on. It's such a low amount. And from Tony Busby's statement that said we had a very respectful negotiation, my feeling is that's a very low amount.
I do want to talk about other allegations too, because in this specific case with Jane Doe filing in April, now we're in July, it's a matter of months before we have a settlement. But then there's Michelle Evans, who also has a lawsuit, but this has been moving through the court system for years. So I'm wondering, do you think there could be a settlement in that case ahead?
Maybe. It just comes to, again, it comes down to the numbers. If someone is saying like, oh, I want $100 million, it's not worth it to me to settle. If someone has a number that is in mind, and I say this all the time, right when I became a lawyer, there was a case that I had. It was my personal case, right? But I was driving a Jeep, I had a Jeep CJ7, and an arm from an apartment building smashed down on my windshield when I was driving through. And before I became a lawyer, they're like, hey, sorry, but we're not paying a dime. Like, go ahead and sue us. So I was like, okay. And then I became a lawyer, and the first case that I filed was against them. And I was like, okay, now I'm suing you. And it was like $2,500. So the apartment building was like, oh, this is going to cost us $7,000, $10,000 to hire an attorney. We're just going to pay him the $2,500. Now, if I said I want $20,000, they would have said, that's okay. Keep going with your lawsuit because it's only going to cost us $10,000 to fight your lawsuit. Same thing with these type of cases. So that case that's older, probably the amounts in mediation are not the amounts that you would want to pay for settlement, because economically it's a silly amount. So if someone's asking for $15 or $20 million, you can defend the case for $500,000, and you think there's nothing to it, that you really don't have any liability. You just keep defending the case.
Seems like in that case, it might be a bit about the numbers based on your answer there about weighing the options and everything. A lot happening in the Shannon.
The numbers.
It always is the bottom line, right? But there really is a lot
yes.
happening in the Shannon Sharpe case. Thank you so much, Bradford Cohen, for coming on and giving us your expertise and breaking it all down for us.
Thanks for having me.
That's where the case sits right now with Shannon Sharpe. And that also means that's where we'll be leaving you for this episode of Sidebar. Be sure to find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Gillespie. Thanks for listening.